Today, we are going to be talking about the White House task force against online harassment and abuse, because this is crazy. Now, I covered this a while back and went into it, and there was a little bit of noise online, people talking about it. There were some blog articles, there were some videos and things like that, but I don't feel like it really went into detail, most of them, on what this potentially means. And there was actually an update to it just recently, about 7 or 8 days ago now, and nobody's talking about it. Nobody is even bringing it up. It's like under the radar now. And I feel like when they first launched this, the reason they set it back and said, in this many days, in like 180 days, we'll have an update and we'll have a blueprint, yada, yada. They know people aren't going to follow up on it, and they don't do press releases. The official video on the White House YouTube channel, when they first officially launched this, the video has 10,000 views and comments are turned off. Now, I have a Chrome extension that allows me to see the dislike count, and this has 246 likes and 1.1 thousand dislikes. So it's been ratioed, but only 10,000 views on a White House channel that has 2.6 million subscribers. That's unheard of, which means what happened is they didn't promote this. They did not want you to know about this, so it's flying under the radar. There was an update just several days ago, and no one's talking about it. But I'm gonna talk about it because this is dangerous. Now, I did a video recently talking about Matt Walsh going off on Dylan Mulvaney and how I believe it's totally justified the way he's talking to him. And I feel like all of this is justified. I feel like we are to a point where we need to stop being complacent. We need to stop not talking about it, and we need to start pushing, because it is working its way into our laws. I had said in that video that they're coming at us to make misgendering somebody a federal hate crime. It's already happening in other countries. You just need to do a little bit of research and you can find it. But again, they're just keeping quiet about it because they don't want you to know. And usually when you say things like that, that's when people come out and say,
"You're just a conspiracy theorist. You think everything, the government's out to get you. They're going to do this. They're going to do that."
Yeah, and there's a reason, because most of the stuff ends up being confirmed. So let's look at it. Everything that I talk about in this video, I will link to in the description. So just go down there and I'll link to the fact sheet. I'll link to the memorandum, and I'll link to the blueprint that was just updated recently. So this was originally posted on June 16th of 2022. And again, I did a video on this way back then when it first launched. I actually played the video and went through the video. I will also link to that so you can watch that catastrophe as well. And this was started by Vice President Kamala Harris, just so you know. Fact sheet. Presidential memorandum establishing the White House task force to address online harassment and abuse. Now, again, we know that harassment and abuse are subjective terms. What is harassment and abuse to you might not be to me, might not be to other people. So if you go after harassment and abuse, you have to go to the least common denominator, which means the weakest among us, and you have to start regulating from there, because we can't have a single little feeling hurt in this country. Don't hurt anybody's feelings. That's bad. People can't handle their feelings getting hurt. Facts don't give a about your feelings. Today, President Biden will sign a presidential memorandum establishing the White House task force to address online harassment and abuse, responding to the need for government leadership to address online harms, which disproportionately affect women, girls, people of color, and LGBTQI+ individuals. Nothing about white men. White men, doesn't matter. You get harassed, you get bullied, you get told to shut up, you get called a honky, you get called a white ass, whatever. Doesn't matter. Vice President Harris will launch the task force by hosting a survivor and expert roundtable this afternoon. Survivor. They're saying that if you have taken online harassment and abuse, meaning you've had people call you names, you've had people, call you out for your bullshit, you are a survivor. That means you survived a bad thing. Like somebody who survived a war. It's nuts. The tragic events in Buffalo and Uvalde have underscored a fact known all too well by many Americans. The internet can fuel hate, misogyny, and abuse, threaten our communities and safety offline. President Biden has long championed efforts to prevent and address gender-based violence, including writing and passing the landmark Violence Against Women Act, VAWA, nearly 3 decades ago as a U.S. Senator, and signing its reauthorization into law earlier this year. Again, this is 2022. The reauthorized VAWA includes historic new protections against online harassment and abuse. Vice President Harris, who is hosting today's task force, has long been a champion of addressing online harassment and abuse throughout her career, including as United States Senator and California's Attorney General. Except, I guess, for the people that she left in for weed charges and murder charges, even when new evidence had come to light. Like, I guess she only gives a if you're a minority, if you're LGBTQPRTRT, she only cares about that group. I mean, what the hell? She was a tyrant in her other capacities. She still is. The task force will produce recommendations for the federal government, state governments, technology platforms, schools, and other public and private entities to prevent and address technology-facilitated gender-based violence, including a focus on the nexus between online misogyny and radicalization to violence. Okay, when they say technology-facilitated, that is from your computer, that is from your phone, that is from social media, that is any piece of tech. That is a journalist. That is somebody who's reporting on, let's say I do a podcast. Let's say I do a news show, an independent news show. Who does an independent news show? Oh, that's right. We do. We do an independent news show. And if we would happen to call out Dylan Mulvaney, for instance, okay? Let's use Matt Walsh as an example. Matt Walsh does his video, goes after Dylan the way that he did. Well, guess what? Under this, that would be technology facilitated gender-based violence. Tell me I'm wrong. Is that not correct? Matt Walsh, under this, would be facing a federal crime. Well, I'll get into that. That's crazy. Recommendations will focus particularly on increasing support for survivors of online harassment and abuse. Right now, based on this, Dylan Mulvaney is a survivor of violence and harassment from Matt Walsh. Matt, you violent man. How dare you use your words so violently? But at least Dylan survived, right? Am I right? At least they survived. Expanding research to better understand the impact and scope of the problem, enhancing prevention, including prevention focused on youth and strengthening accountability for offenders and platforms. The task force will be co-chaired by the Gender Policy Council and the National Security Council, and will include the Attorney General, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and other heads of federal agencies. Enhancing prevention, strengthening accountability for offenders and platform. Matt Walsh, let's use him again. He's the offender. Dylan is the survivor. So Matt, as the offender, they want to strengthen accountability, whatever that means. We'll get into that. It does say down below. And did you know we have a Gender Policy Council? What the fuck is that? What the fuck is a Gender Policy Council? So remember when I told you that I said that this is going to start affecting policy, and people were like, no, it's not. It's not going to start affecting policy. You're being hyperbolic. It's not going to affect policy. Come on now, wake up. If it's not going to affect policy, then why would we need a Gender Policy Council? Answer me that question. Why would we need that? And it's going to include the Attorney General? Why would it include the Attorney General? Because it's going to have laws tied to it. There's going to be litigation tied to this. Otherwise, why have the Attorney General? The National Security Council? A matter of national security? Gender-based stuff? Strengthening the federal response to online harms. White House task force to address online harassment and abuse. Here we go. The task force is an interagency effort to address online harassment and abuse, specifically focused on technology-facilitated gender-based violence. Technology-facilitated, podcast, independent media, your phone, text messages. That's all technology. Everything we do is technology-based. In consultation with survivors, advocates, educators, experts from diverse fields, and the private sector, the task force will develop specific recommendations to improve prevention, response, and protection efforts through programs and policies in the United States and globally by improving coordination among executive departments, agencies, and offices to maximize the federal government's effectiveness in preventing and addressing technology-facilitated gender-based violence in the United States and globally. Globally, we've already seen it happening globally. We've already seen people getting jail sentences, prison sentences for misgendering. Look at Canada. Look at, I believe, Switzerland, United States, and globally, including by developing policy solutions to enhance accountability for those who perpetuate online harms. Matt Walsh, they're coming for you, man. I'd watch your ass. Enhancing and expanding data collection and research across the federal government to measure the cost, prevalence, exposure to, and impact of technology-facilitated gender-based violence, including by studying the mental health effects and harassment of abuse perpetrated through social media, particularly affecting adolescents. This is about little kids. This is about them getting to the little kids young, getting them on pharmaceuticals, and getting that greenback. The money. It's all about the money. Think about who benefits from this the most. Increasing access to survivor-centered services, information and support for victims, and increasing training and technical assistance for federal, state, tribal, local, and territorial governments, as well as for global organizations and entities in the field of criminal justice, health and mental health services, education, and victim services. You hear that? Federal, state, tribal, local, and territorial. Every aspect of government is covered in this document. Every one of them. And health and mental health services, the schools, education, and victim services. This shit's coming to our schools. It's already there in many cases, but it's coming even harder. Developing programs and policies to address the disproportionate impact of online harassment, abuse, and disinformation campaigns targeting women and LGBTQI+ individuals who are public and political figures, government and civic leaders, activists, and journalists in the United States and globally. Taylor Lorenz.
That poor woman.
Poor woman, Taylor Lorenz. She just can't take it. She can't take the pain. I don't have time for the pain.
Examining existing federal laws, regulations, and policies to evaluate the adequacy and of the current legal framework to address technology-facilitated gender-based violence and provide recommendations for strengthening it. Federal laws, regulations, policies to evaluate the adequacy of the current legal framework to address technology-facilitated gender-based violence. Federal, did you hear that? Federal laws, not state, not local. I mean, it will carry over to that, but we're talking federal. Your federal government is coming after you for gender-based crimes. Identifying additional opportunities to improve efforts to prevent and address technology-facilitated based. They love that technology-facilitated because it covers everything. Any device that we talk on these days, it's all technology-based. We don't talk face-to-face anymore. But it'll carry over to that. Identifying additional opportunities to improve efforts to prevent and address technology-facilitated gender-based violence in the United States, foreign policy, and foreign assistance, including through the Global Partnership for Action on Gender-Based Online Harassment and Abuse. Global partnership. There's a global partnership. I'll be damned. If you want a video on the global initiative, give this video a like and leave me a comment and let me know. So I'm going to skip a little bit here because I want to get into the update. You can download this and read it yourself, go through all of it. But another thing that I want to address here is some just blatant lies where there are stats that are being mentioned that don't exist. They are able to just completely make up now and say whatever they want to say because they know nobody fact checks them. Nobody looks at this, and people who hear it just toe the line and will cite this as evidence. They will cite this as fact. Well, it said that this many people are affected without any regard for facts. So let's listen to what this says. In the United States, 1 in 3 women under the age of 35 report being sexually harassed online, and over half of the LGBTQI+ individuals report being a target of severe online abuse. Over half. That is complete and utter bullshit. They won't cite it because it doesn't exist. And even if they made it up, people would be able to poke holes in it. It's not true. Individuals may also be disproportionately targeted because of their race, gender, and gender identity, ethnicity, religion, age, disability, sexual orientation, or at the intersection of various identities. Online harassment and abuse take many forms, including the non-consensual distribution of intimate digital images, cyber stalking, sextortion, doxing, malicious deepfakes, gender disinformation, rape and death threats, the distribution of child sexual abuse materials, online recruitment, and exploitation of victims of sex trafficking, including youth, and various other forms of technology-facilitated intimate partner abuse. So again, I'm not going to go into the rest of this. Just download it and read it for yourself. You see where it's going, but let's cover the update that they just released because it's important. March 3rd, 2023, this was released. This is the executive summary, initial blueprint for the White House task force to address online harassment and abuse. Online harassment and abuse is increasingly widespread in today's digitally connected world. This can include online threats and intimidation, as well as various forms of technology-facilitated gender-based violence, GBV, gender-based violence, such as the non-consensual distribution of intimate images, cyber stalking and sextortion. Women, girls, and LGBTQI+ individuals are disproportionately affected. Survivors of online harassment and abuse, especially image-based abuse, are often forced to relive their trauma and face ongoing harm that increases exponentially over time, owing to the viral flow of information on digital media and the difficulty of removing damage and non-consensual content. Oh my God, those poor people. Those poor people. If you took the images, okay, you trusted somebody to take pictures of you, naked pictures of you, yeah, those are private. But you know what? You're not forced to relive a trauma. My God, are people that weak that they look at that as trauma? If my pictures got leaked of me buck-ass naked, I'd be embarrassed. I wouldn't want it out there, but I wouldn't be like,
Oh my God. I just can't relive the trauma. My photos, My penis is out there for the world to see.
My God. Simply put, the scale, reach, and amplification effects of technology platforms have exacerbated GBV, and platforms have not sufficiently prevented or addressed how these modalities are used for harm. Oh, you mean Facebook, Twitter now, Instagram, TikTok, all of these? They're coming for them. They're coming for your platforms. They're coming to make the internet a safe space for all. When you try to make it a safe space for all, you have to go by the least common denominator, the weakest among us. Not one person can be offended. Not one. Because if one person is offended, that's too much. Can't handle it. To tackle this scourge, President Biden has issued a presidential memorandum in June establishing the White House Task Force to address online harassment and abuse. Task Force. With a mandate to develop concrete actions in a blueprint to prevent online harassment and abuse, provide support for survivors, increase accountability, and expand research. Since its launch, the task force has heard from hundreds of stakeholders, survivors, advocates, parents, educators, law enforcement, medical and legal professionals, and researchers who discuss the significant harm caused by online harassment and abuse, the powerful testimonies of survivors, including from youth, college students, public figures, and social media influencers, demonstrate the widespread reach of technology-facilitated gender-based violence. While each of their stories is unique, they share common threads and lessons that inform the initial task force blueprint. The weakest among us. They are polling the weakest among us. I guarantee they're not polling conservatives, and that's not to say I'm a conservative, because I'm not. But what I'm saying is they're only surveying the side that's going to give them the answers they want. They probably go through TikTok, they probably go through Instagram, and they select who they want to get their bias to poll, to ask these questions. College campuses, really? You're going to go on and ask college students this? You're going to ask kids that are on TikTok, heavily influenced? Yeah. The poll's rigged. Stakeholders shared with the task force how online harassment and abuse can have a severe impact on health, disrupt education, and derail careers. They explain how victims experience real devastating consequences to their health, including post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, depression, anxiety, eating disorders, self-harm, and suicide, as well as increased risk of physical and sexual violence. Survivors described how they self-censored and withdrew from online spaces and from broader engagement in academic, workplace, or social settings. They self-censored. That means they stopped going on Facebook. I mean, do you realize that every single platform has the ability to block people? You can block whoever you want and never hear from them again. If you want to create an echo chamber that only solidifies the way that you feel, you can do that. You have that power. They self-censored and withdrew.
I can't even go on the internet. Every time I try, I'm harassed, I'm abused, people calling me names.
Weakest among us, the weakest among us. So survivors describe how they self-censored and withdrew from online spaces and from broader engagement in academic, workplace, or social settings, often encouraged to do so by those who were unable or unwilling to help. The task force also heard from stakeholders about the impact on safety, health, and well-being of children and youth stemming from the proliferation of child sexual abuse material traded online, including through exposure to unknown adults through gaming and messenger platforms. But funny enough, they're not talking about, they're not mentioning that. They're not mentioning these psychos like Jeffrey Marsh on TikTok going after kids, indoctrinating kids, trying to pull kids into this gender ideology. They're not mentioning that. I guess that's not considered abuse? Putting kids on hormone blockers before they're of a certain age? I don't think kids should be even able to think about that until they're 21. About mutilating their bodies, about changing their hormones, about blocking their puberty. If a boy picks up a doll, he is not a girl. But that's not on here. That is not even mentioned. Why? Because that's the agenda that they want. That is the agenda that they're trying to create with this. This task force is to stop you from being able to say that you do not like that. So quit standing up for the kids that you think are being indoctrinated, because nothing to see here. The task force does not agree with you. The stakeholders don't agree. The stakes of inaction couldn't be higher. Experts from a range of disciplines underscored to the task force that in addition to the devastating effects of individuals, the proliferation of online harassment, abuse, and misogyny results in the normalization of this abusive behavior and the degradation of our democracy and public safety, including through the suppression and silencing of diverse voices and the violent expression of gender-motivated extremist acts. Listen to that sentence. That is crazy. The stakes of inaction couldn't be higher. Okay? You being silent and not standing up to these people that want to mutilate your kids, these people that want to affirm your child's gender. They want them on hormone blockers. How dare you be silent? How dare you practice inaction? These kids need to be affirmed. The proliferation of online harassment, abuse, and misogyny results in the normalization of this abusive behavior and the degradation of our democracy and public safety, including through the suppression and silencing of diverse voices and the violent expression of gender-motivated extremist acts. So if you say you don't agree with gender-affirming care, you don't agree that a kid gets put on puberty blockers, you don't agree that a child should be mutilated to have gender surgery, bottom surgery, top surgery, wear binders and sick stuff like that, if you don't buy into that, you are violently expressing extremist views. You're basically going to be a domestic terrorist if you go against this. When they start using the word extremist, violence, that's when things start getting out of hand. Because then you, by going against this minority of people, these loudmouth pieces of shit, you will be the one getting in trouble. Despite the pervasive nature of online harassment and abuse, as well as robust evidence of its consequences, it became evident to the task force that there's much more to be done to ensure that educators, parents, service providers, and the legal system and society as a whole are aware of and responsive to the issue and its detrimental impacts. So, schools, parents, service providers, and the legal system, the law. So, you know what your kids learn in school or what happens to them in school, none of your business. They're going to teach you how to be parents. How can you be parents? Well, we're going to show you. We're going to show you how to be the perfect parents and to affirm gender. We're going to infiltrate your schools. We're going to infiltrate all of your services. We're going to infiltrate your town, your township, your city, your state, your federal government with gender ideology. And if you don't get it, you're an extremist. Today, the Biden-Harris administration is releasing an executive summary of the initial task force blueprint, which includes a broad range of new and expanded commitments from federal agencies to address technology-facilitated GBV across 4 main lines of effort: prevention, survivor support, accountability, and research. Now, whenever they use a word like prevention, do you know what that means? Do you actually know what that means? Prevention. This is where the people will be like,
You're just being a conspiracy theorist, dude.
that is not conspiracy theory. When they say prevention, that means they are going to try to do things to prevent you from saying what you feel, for standing up for kids that are facing mutilation, facing gender affirming care, that are facing puberty blockers. I keep using Matt Walsh as an example. Matt Walsh in this scenario he's literally, if this goes through, he's an extremist, basically a domestic terrorist. Through this blueprint, senior administration officials are working to operationalize the president's call to action in the State of Union for solutions to address online safety, health, privacy, and accountability. While the president continues to call on Congress to do its part, senior officials from federal departments and agencies are undertaking key actions across the administration. Key actions. They're really serious about this one, people. New resources to train law enforcement, prosecutors, and victim services providers on cyber crimes against individuals. Here we go. Now we're getting into the law. The Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2023, FY23 Omnibus Law, allocates $7 million for the Department of Justice to fund 2 new programs authorized in the Violence Against Women Act reauthorization of 2022, including the establishment of a National Resource Center on Cybercrimes Against Individuals. Cybercrimes is defined in VAWA as the use of electronic interactive devices to harass, threaten, stalk, extort, coerce, cause fear. There are some terrified, scared motherfuckers out there. And again, I say, they go by the weakest among us. Something that scares you might not scare me. What if this was spiders and I'm terrified of spiders and you're not? So we're going to take my fear of spiders and that's what's going to dictate the law. Kill all spiders. Spiders are all dead because I'm scared of them. Doesn't matter if you love them. You have a spider at your house that's your pet. Guess what? Don't care. It's dead because I'm scared of them. I want the laws to promote my feelings, to stand by my feelings. Preventing and addressing technology-facilitated gender-based violence globally. Okay, here's where we start the global initiative. And again, I'm going to do a video on that. If you want me to, make sure you let me know in the comments. Give this video a thumbs up and subscribe and click the bell if you want to get notified when I do more. I'd really appreciate it. In December 2022, the administration released an update, U.S. strategy to prevent and respond to gender-based violence globally, which bolsters U.S. commitments to prevent and address this global scourge, including a specific objective to prevent and respond to technology-facilitated gender-based violence. The strategy complements the administration's ongoing efforts to better prioritize, understand, prevent, and address technology-facilitated gender-based violence through the Global Partnership for Action on Gender-Based Online Harassment and Abuse, which the U.S. launched in 2022 and coordinates with 11 other countries. So I'm not going to go over this again. I'll do a video on this, but like I said, there's other countries that are already doing this stuff. And here's a list of the countries that are part of this global initiative. See if you've heard anything in any of these countries about gender-based crimes and people being put in jail already or whatever for these. The United States, Denmark, the United Kingdom, Sweden, Australia, and the Republic of Korea from the initial set of member countries in the global partnership. And we already know Canada's there. I don't think maybe Canada's not part of this global initiative, but we know that this is happening in Canada. We know that for sure. So basically, it's just a big umbrella. It's just a big blanket, a big drag net, if you will. We're just going to drag that net because you know what? Every time the government launches something, it's efficient. They never mess up. People don't get caught in the net accidentally. You know, I just did a video talking about a speech that Trump did. If you haven't seen it, click on the card up here and go watch that, where he's talking about making stop and frisk a federal thing. And people are like, that's not going to get abused. You know, maybe it'll get abused a little bit here and there, but it's going to help. It's going to help eliminate crime. But it's a direct violation of the Fourth Amendment. We keep giving up more and more of our rights. And this is another encroachment on our rights, our right to free speech. You know, Jordan Peterson, who I'm not a complete fan of. I like Jordan Peterson. I like some of the things he said, but I'm not like a staunch supporter. He loses me sometimes, but I'm not going to throw him out with the bathwater. He fought this battle already in Canada, and they basically want him re-educated or he can potentially lose his license. I don't know if that's come to fruition and he's lost his license or where that is, but that's ridiculous. It's compelled speech. They are trying to compel us to say the words that they want us to say. And if we don't affirm gender, if we don't concede that if a boy picks up a doll, he's a girl, then we're extremists. We're criminals. And again, like I keep saying, Matt Walsh, you will be ground zero. You will be target numero uno. And that's just wrong. So what are you going to do about it? I really want to know what you guys think in the comments. Is this hyperbole? Like, do you think I'm being hyperbolic? Or do you see the same things I see when you read this? Again, I'm putting all of the links in the description, so make sure you go and read these for yourself, line by line, like I do, and see if you come up with the same conclusion. Like I said in that Trump video, we have a book like this. The laws that we require them to follow is this big, and we are losing more of those rights every single day. And free speech, this directly violates and goes after that. This is compelled speech. And like I said, a federal crime to misgender somebody. And there are over 1,000 genders now. This group is completely out of control. And I agree 100% with Matt Walsh. We cannot continue to be kind and complacent because complacency is what's encouraging them to continue to move forward. We have to be louder than that group, and we have to be louder than them now because it is affecting policy. We have a gender policy council. But anyway, that's all I got today, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If you want more of this, be sure to give me a thumbs up and subscribe, whether you're on Rumble or YouTube or Twitter. And if you want to help me gather stories for the channel, head over to our Discord server. The link is in the description. If you want to join, it's free. We also have a community where you can get access to behind the scenes content, exclusive content, early releases, and all that. Just head over to redacted.inc and sign up for that, and the newsletter if you're not already subscribed to that. That's free as well. Comes every weekday. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.
That my feet don't work no more.